All right, I think we're live. I think we're live to start sewing the Orla Dress, which is right here. It's a French navy free pattern, and you can get the link to the pattern and the few instructions that they have from my website. Just head over to hipstitchacademy.com, go to the Lunchtime live stream, find today's date. The link is there. So I have cut out my pattern, I've taped it together, I've cut it out, and I've actually cut the fabric out. I'm going to show you a few things. This is a pattern that only goes up to US size 12, and I need a bigger size than 12, so I've scaled it up. I'll show you a little bit how I did that. But that's definitely something that is easily learned in a private lesson. If that's something that you want to learn how to start doing, scaling up, or, making size adjustments, it's definitely something that you could learn in a sewing lesson. But for now, if you're brand new, what I suggest is just picking a smaller size. Maybe do the extra small for a little girl in your life. Just to keep it simple. But then, like I said, once you learn how to scale up, if you need to, you can do that. I'm going to go over to my table here where I've got the pattern pieces set up. Here we go. Okay, so one thing I did want to mention today is when you're printing out the pattern, you always want to print out the page that has the tester square on it. That one happens to be page 14. But anyway, print that first and make sure that you are printing the pattern the right size. So this tester square, I think this pattern is from New Zealand, so everything's in centimeters, which, by the way, is fabulous if you don't want to, really pay attention to your measurements. If you get kind of thrown off by taking your waist measurement in inches because you think it should be a certain size, take it in centimeters, and then you don't really know what the you don't have a number in your head that you're supposed to be or whatever. So that's a really great tip if you're, just don't want to take your measurements. People have some hang-ups about size, myself included, so take it in centimeters. Anyway, the tester square needs to be 10 centimeters when you print it. So you always want to test that first. Mine was good to go. Now I have my back bodice. I'm cutting 2. This is the fabric that I'm doing. I actually chose a fabric that has a little bit of stretch in it. The fabric doesn't call for that. The fabric calls for a woven, but I just decided to do that. Totally up to you. It's got some darts and it's got a zipper, so it does not need to be stretch. I just kind of felt like this one, for me, I wanted to do it in this fabric, and I don't know, it just felt like it needed a little bit of stretch. I think I'm gonna wind up wearing this more as like a shirt rather than a dress. I'm just gonna edit this real quick. This is the Orla Dress. Anywho, okay, so like I said, I added some to my sides. Anywhere where there's a size difference, I added to it. So the way that I kind of figured it out is I took my waist measurement, and I needed to have at least 111 centimeters to fit around my waist. And the XL is about 80 centimeters, so I needed to add about 30 centimeters. So I'm dividing that in 4 different spots. Like I said, this gets a little bit confusing to explain in a live stream, but I will just briefly go over it. Basically, when I measured and didn't include the dart, I had 44 centimeters on the front and 40 centimeters on the back, giving me about 84 centimeters. I needed it to be about 112, so I needed to add 28 centimeters. So basically, I needed to have this piece be 54 centimeters, the back be 54 centimeters across. I needed the front to be 48 centimeters across, which means I just add 8 on the front and I add 10 on the back. So that's where we've got this, about 5 centimeters here, and that's multiplied by 2 because this is the center and there are 2 pieces. So in a nutshell, that's how I did it. Where, see how right here, this difference is a lot bigger than this difference. So I kind of kept it to scale. That's a little bit bigger, so I added more here, here, and then I added some length because I have a chest. So that's in a nutshell what I did. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to mark your darts. And I just kind of lined up the dart. I marked it at the bottom, went up to where the dart ends up here, and then I drew a triangle. I didn't do one on this side because I wanted the chance to show you. So, when you've got one on one side but not on the other, it's super easy. You're just gonna mark the bottoms and figure out where the top is. You can probably just do that by sticking a pin through. There's the top. I'm gonna mark that, and then I can take my pin out. This is actually a pen that will come out with a hot iron, so don't worry. You could just use a regular pen though, one that will come out where the ink will come out in the laundry. It's up to you. I don't get too crazy about things. Alright, so there's my dart on the back. Now, to sew my dart, I'm going to separate my pieces. Here, let me clear a little bit of space so I don't get too crowded. And so there's my back. And this is the center. And we need to sew these 2 darts. So what you're gonna do is fold them, put right sides together, line up the bottoms of the darts, fold it along where the center of the dart is, and pin it so that when you sew on one side, you're hitting the line of the dart on the other side. So I need to adjust my dart a bit, so that will happen. And I'm gonna add some pins. So there's one. I'm gonna start sewing here up to where the dart ends. Yeah, looks like I'm pretty lined up. Same over here. Now I am watching the live chat, you guys, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat. I do have it open today. I don't think I even looked at it once last week because I was thinking about lots of other technical things, but I am looking at it right now, so if you're there and you want to say hi, go for it. Alright, so I'm doing the same thing. I'm folding it so that the line of my dart is lined up with the line of the dart on this side. Adding a couple pins, and then I'm going to sew it. Because my fabric is slightly stretchy, let me change this view so you can see my sewing machine, which is here. There we go. I'm going to put on I'm going to set it to knit, and then I'm going to put on a slight zigzag. Whenever you sew stretch, you want to sew a slight zigzag. You know what? I'm going to sew it. I'm going to flip it and sew on that line. So I'm starting right at the bottom, and then I'm going to sew up to the top of the dart that is right here. I'll mark it with a pin so I remember to stop sewing there. And as I get closer to the top of the dart, I'm going to bring my stitch length down a little bit. And then sew right off the fabric. And I can cut my, there we go. So now, if I switch you back, you can see that there's a little dart right in the back right here. Do the same thing on my other one. Once again, I'm starting at the bottom. And I'm going to sew up to the top of the dart that I'm now marking with a pin so I know. Oh, and I've had a really small stitch length the entire time, so I'm good. I never changed it back. Alright, I am going to change it back because the next time I sew, I don't want that tiny, tiny stitch in case I make a mistake. And it will be difficult to get out. Alright, switching the cameras again. I've got my backs, center back, zipper's gonna go right down the center, and now I've got the center front. This is folded, so there's no seam down the middle. I cut it on the fold per the instructions, and again, I have about an extra 4 or 5 centimeters on this edge, up here. I have some extra at the bottom, and then not as much extra because there's not as much of a difference here as there is here. So that's how you know to scale the extra amount. If you're not adding extra, it's super easy. Okay, same thing. I've got my darts on the front. I'll take away the backs so you can just see what I'm working on. There's my front, there's the center, and here I've got a dart here and I've got a dart here. So same thing, folding the darts down the center so right sides are together. Make sure your dart lines are on top of each other. And pin. Okay, and then same thing over here. It's almost like you put your fingers at the base of the dart, and then I kind of pinch at the top of the dart and pretend there's a line right down the middle. And that's your fold line, and just make sure that the lines of the darts are lined up on the front and back. Stick a couple pins in, and go sew them. All right. Looks just like the back dart, the way we set it up. I am going to, just so I don't forget where my dart ends, I'm going to stick a pin. And then I'm going to bring that stitch length down a little. Go all the way. Oh, maybe that was too much. I'm barely moving. There we go. Pull it off and bring that back up to 3. My other dart. And again, find where that dart ends. Put a pin there to remind yourself. Bring that stitch length down for the end. And you're off. Okay. Here is the front. Next step is going to be, I am going to do the sewing of the bodice a little bit differently than they have the steps. I mean, in case you didn't see, there are some sewing instructions that, this is a free pattern, so they're doing it super fast. So they're just kind of listing out the steps. I am going to do it a little differently because I feel like there's an easier way to do some things. So bear with me. I do it my way, I guess I've just been doing it a while, so I have my way of doing things. When there's a zipper in it, I just have an order of operation. Okay, so the thing that I want to do is I'm just going to line up the shoulder seams, and they are pretty much the same across, which is good. Sometimes when you add to the size, they can be a little wonky, but somehow I've done that correctly. I'm going to pin, and I always pin perpendicular to where I'm going to sew. So this is a shoulder seam. I'm going to sew this way. I pin that perpendicular. You can pin this way if you want to as well. It doesn't matter. It's just less awkward for me to pin them that way. And then same thing on the back. Lining up the other shoulder seam, grabbing some pins. If you've got a discrepancy up here, I would, actually it doesn't even matter. You could have a little extra hanging on either side, and you're able to fix it when you do the sleeve or when you do the neckline. All right, so I'm just doing 2 pins there. I'm going to sew these shoulder seams now. I have built in a 1/2 inch seam allowance when I took my measurements. Let's all use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. That's about what it is when we looked at the measurements and the sizes. And the actual size of the pattern piece is the 1/2 inch seam allowance is going to work. So I'm going to have the edge of the foot with the edge of my fabric. My stitch length is way too small. Change that. And this is just the shoulder seam. But when I'm sewing, I'm not watching the needle. I'm watching the edge. I'm keeping the edge of my foot along the edge of the fabric. So that's a good thing if you're just starting out sewing and you're like, how do I keep it straight? That's the trick. Keep a reference point. Have the edge of the foot along the edge of the fabric and watch that, not the needle. I just did a little back stitch. Pull that off. And same thing on the other shoulder. So, I'll go back to my pinning and cutting area, and I think the next thing I want to do is actually I'm going to add the back of the skirt. So I want to put a zipper here, and it's super easy to put a zipper in when the back is not sewn to the front. So that is why I'm going to put the back bodice on next. Now, I'm going to just show you a little trick. Well, here, let's do this. Let's remove the front and get the backs. You've got to get the back skirts to be as wide as the bottom of the back bodice. Now, I didn't add a whole lot of width, probably as much as what I added to the top, but you can see it's considerably bigger. And so you've got to either gather it or add some pleats or do something so that the bottom skirt is the same size as the top. So I think what I'm going to do is, let me just check here what the front looks like. So the front is showing gathering, and the instructions see, and I just don't love the way that looks personally, because what it's gonna do is it's gonna like pop up and be really a lot more bulky at the waist if I don't pleat it. So that's going to be my little modification here. You all can gather it if you want to. You're going to learn how to gather it, I think, a little bit on the sleeve. But for now, I'm going to box pleat, basically. I have how much extra? I'll do it in centimeters. I have 12 centimeters of extra, so I'm going to do 2 box pleats, 2 6-inch box pleats to get rid of my extra 12 centimeters, which means I need, I'll mark it. Where'd my pen go? Here it is. It doesn't really matter where they are. So I'm just going to say, okay, fine. There's 6 centimeters here, and I'll do 6 centimeters here. I'm also going to mark the middle. So that's obviously 3. When you're doing box pleats, you want to fold them to the side. not towards the center. So you want to, once they're marked, you're basically going to move one pin over to the other pin, and then this is going to be the 6 centimeters that you're going to get rid of. So I just pin those like that. So that's one box pleat. And then I've marked, and then I like to also pin, because once these pins are in here straight, it's super easy to bring the pin over so they're right on top of each other. And then you've got 3 layers of fabric here, but that's what I'm going to move my pin and create my second box pleat. And what that does is it makes the skirt and the bodice top the same width, roughly. So I'm going to baste that. So basically what that means is I'm just going to sew along this top edge so those bastes stay in place. And that is what they'll kind of look like. It's upside down, I guess. That's what it's going to look like on the back. And the reason I do, you can kind of see, the reason I do this is because the box pleats, they wind up sitting a lot flatter than gathers do. And for this kind of thing, I think it's going to just look nicer. Okay? And yes, I've got some of this selvage showing, but because it's a center seam, I'm going to take a nice big seam allowance when I sew that center seam, because my zipper's going in there and you're not going to see any of that. So that is why I've not cut that off, if you're wondering. Okay. There's one side. Box pleats are done. My other side, have I lost it? No, it's right here. Okay. We do the same thing. Try to estimate where you put the other ones. I'm such a wing it kind of sewer, and I think that's okay. But I'm marking 6 centimeters, I'm marking the middle, and then I'm going to go over here and mark 6 centimeters, and I'm marking the middle. And that's when I pin the ends of my box pleats. And they're going to move this way. So I'm going to bring one pin over to the other one. Move those to sew through 3 layers of fabric to create my first box pleat. Same thing, bring the pins together. And through the layers there, okay? And now I've got my second box pleat. Looks about the same size as my other one, so I'm going to baste those, which means I'm just going to sew through the top layers. Actually, I'm going to pretend that I do that. So you may want to do that. Sew through the top. For the sake of time, I'm actually going to trade spots and flip them over to the right side. And I'm going to sew the back bodice to the back skirts without basting. So where are my backs here? To make sure do this the right way. Okay. So here it is. Right sides together. And the back bodice and the back skirt. Now where those are through all those layers, I'm going to add another layer, making sure my raw edges are lining up. And the back is right to the end. I'm going to stick some more pins in. So everything. And then same thing with this dart. You're going to finger press or make sure it heads to the side, not towards the middle. And make sure your bodice is not twisted. Lining this up. I want to move my dart that's in my bodice this way and keep my box pleats down here all lined up. There we go. And again, just lining up these raw edges. One more pin right here. Okay. Now that is ready to sew. So back to the sewing machine view. And again, I want you to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So what you're watching is the edge of the foot along the edge of what you're sewing. Now, before you get to that box pleat, make sure it is laying totally flat on your sewing machine. And same goes for the dart. The dart you can see because that's facing up. And same with that other box pleat. Back stitch at the end. Cut that off. And same on the other side. Slide that off. Edge of foot with the edge of the fabric. Before you get too far, double check your box pleat. Make sure it's headed in the right direction. Yeah, so this is my shoulder. Yeah, it's in the right direction. And it's laying flat. Check my other one. Looking good. And there we go. I'll pull it off. Let's go take a look at it over here. So this is kind of a weird order, but like I said, I do it this way so we can put that zipper in while it's nice and flat. And the zipper, I just want to talk about that for a second. There's my front. Oh, please tell me it's not twisted. Oh, there we go. The lay of the land here for a second so you can see what's happening. Okay. Neck edge up here, right? Here's where the zipper is going to go. When you have a dress or a top like this where the waist is, you know, a fitted waist and you're putting a zipper in, you've got to have the zipper extend past the waist, or else you're not going to be able to get it on, right? You're not going to be able to get it over your hips or your bust or whatever it is. You've got to have your hips, I guess, in this case. You've got to have the zipper go down to, at least like 3 inches beyond where the waist is. So that's about where my zipper is going to end. That always leaves you, if, you're making at least it leaves me, because I have a chest and I have a long bodice, you have to have this like super long zipper. Here's a trick. I usually buy 18-inch zippers, and if it doesn't go all the way to the top, what I'll do is I will just hem the top here, wherever the zipper ends, I'll hem it, and then I can put a little hook and eye, so there's like a little keyhole. So like if my zipper ends here, I can put a little hook and eye here to close it up, okay? So it means you can kind of get away with not having like such a super long zipper. So that's just a big trick that I use with these dresses that have fitted bodices, especially at the waist, okay? So rather than, I think I'm gonna skip the zipper until part 2, next week's live, and we still have about 20 minutes. So I'm going to put on the front skirt, and we have to box pleat that, right? So let's flip her over. And there's the underarms, so we know what you're looking at. I've got my 2 front darts on the bodice, and now I've cut out the skirt part. And it's pretty much a rectangle, so I don't think it really matters which direction you put it in. But again, your skirt starts out quite a bit wider than your bodice, and you've got to add your box pleats so that the top and the bottom go together, okay? So I think I'm going to first measure. I can match up my centers because I know there's little fold lines. You can kind of see the creases. And then I'm going to see how many centimeters. 10. Yeah. So I've got 10 centimeters extra. I'm going to do 2 box pleats, 5 each on each side. So just like I did on the back, only the back I did 6-inch box pleats, I'm going to do 5-inch box pleats. 5 times 2 is 10. That'll get rid of my 10 centimeters over here. And then that'll get rid of my 10 centimeters over here. So let's do that. Flip it over. Again, we know where the center is because you can see a crease in the fabric. If you can't see it, I'm going to mark it with a red right there. I can bring that a little closer. And let's see, if I lay this on here, I can kind of figure out where the middle is. So if my middle's there, I want to do a box pleat from 4 centimeters to 9 centimeters. So I'm going to put one here. The middle is 6.5. And then I think I'll put one, I'm just kind of picking a spot, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, a 5-inch box pleat, mark my middle, and there we go. Okay, so my first box pleat was 6 centimeters over, so I'm going to mark 6 centimeters over from here. It's 5 inches wide, and I've got 9 centimeters in between. I'm just making it match exactly on the other side. 5 centimeters total. And, oops, I didn't mark my middle. 2.5. 2.5. Now, the thing I always do is look. Look at the whole thing. Make sure you didn't do some crazy measuring. They look pretty even. If that's the middle, that one's here, like where my 3 fingers are. That one's here. I think they're even on both sides. Okay, so that means now is the time to pin them. I like to pin the outer edges of my box pleats because I find that is the easiest way to make them work. Okay, because you're always heading to the side. This is my center. You want to head to the side. Actually, no. I want to do it the other way. I want to go this way because then my extra is headed to the side. My bad. You want your extra heading that way. Pin. Make sure you get all the layers. Again, bring the outer one to the more centered one. Pin all the layers. Get that box plate to lay flat. Get that box plate to lay flat. And then same over here. Pin. 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 And pin. Okay, bring this one so that the pin is on top of the first one. Pin through all the layers of your box pleat. Let that lay flat. You've got an extra pin. Oops, I just flung my pin out. The last box plate, bringing it over so that the yellow pin is on top of the purple pin. Take one out. This one's going to go through all the layers. And we've got 4 box pleats. With any luck, that is going to be the same width as the bodice. Oh, look. Pretty darn close. We can ease it to make it fit, but I do want to have right sides together. So flipping, but keeping my box pleats sort of in order. And these two as well. Now again, you can baste them before you sew them. But I am going to go straight into sewing them. Okay, so there's the bottom of my bodice. I need to put that on right sides together. Oof. Got a pile of fabric in my lap. But I'm going to place that on so that my raw edges are aligned. It's feeling like my bodice is a little bit bigger. Oh no, it's not. Cool. And what I like to do is maybe pin the ends first, and then you can kind of meet in the middle. And if you have to ease it to make it fit, you can. If these triangles of your darts are hanging down past, that's fine. But pin this whole edge together. I'm going to stick one more in that dart because I want it to lay that way, and I want it to stay laying that way. So that's why I use a pin. Very nice. And here. Okay. So now we have the top and the bottom of the front pinned together. Of course, right sides are together. I'm going to sew it with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm doing pretty good on time. We've got about 13 minutes left. And keeping the edge of the foot with the edge of the fabric, except where that dart is. The dart goes past. Making sure my box pleats are flat. I just had a box pleat collapse because I took my pin out too quick. Shoot! Let's see, I'm gonna rescue that box pleat. Let's see if I can just get that back. It's good that we've got them marked because I can easily go back and get that. Repin. Don't take your pins out too quick, people. Okay, I've rescued it. Slide it back on. If you have to stop for any reason, just start about a ½ an inch before you stopped sewing so you can kind of go over what you just sewed, so it's reinforced. And yeah. Okay. So let's go back to this table so we can just look at what we've done here. Got a pile of fabric. Where's my front? Here it is. Yeah, I'm very happy with the way these are coming out. I do have one that went the wrong way, I will admit. I think that was the one that I just had to redo at the last minute, and I think I folded it the wrong way. I'm not going to worry about it, but you can see these two go that way. This one goes this way, but somehow I've done it the wrong way. You can always seam rip and fix that. I'm not going to do that for right now. I'll fix it this week before we sew together. But for now, I'm going to leave it. Looking like it's gonna fit actually, which is exciting. I just know because of all the sewing that I've done for myself. And like I said, I'm gonna leave the zipper for first thing next week. We'll sew that zipper in. I think right now we've got about 9 minutes left. I'm gonna show you the sleeve. We're going to put the sleeve in when it's not like a fully enclosed circle. We're just going to put it in flat. So here's the sleeve hole, and here is one of the sleeves. Now, this, let me move this up a little so you can see. This little mountain is a lot longer than this little valley. So what that means is we get to gather the sleeve right here so that fits into the little hole, okay? most part, when I gather a sleeve, I'll do it starting kind of when the mountain starts to get a little steep, and then I'll end it on the same spot on the other side. So what that means is I'm gonna sew some basting stitches, 2 rows of basting stitches from here to here, 2 rows, literally like 1/8 of an inch apart, and then we're gonna like pull the thread and it's gonna gather up and kind of make this cute little poofy sleeve that's gonna fit right in this valley of our armhole. Okay, so I think we have just enough time to do that. So I'm gonna put it on a straight stitch, make it the length as big as your machine goes. Don't backstitch at the beginning. Don't backstitch at the end, just so. And you're doing it super close to the edge. So like my foot is hanging off. Off, leave a nice long tail, don't backstitch, and you'll see that it even starts to kind of pucker before, yeah, see there's like a nice pucker started already. That's what you want. So now I'm going to do a second row of basting right next to my first row. Don't cross over it though. Don't mistakenly sew across your first row of basting. That will make things a little more complicated. So just be careful, don't go too fast. And do it the same length you did that first one. Lift it off, don't backstitch, and this is the fun part. We get to gather. I actually really like gathering. Okay, so you can see there's white stitching. And what you want to do is grab the threads that are on the top or grab the threads that are on the bottom. It doesn't really matter, but you're going to start to pull from one side, and that is going to make these beautiful gathers for the sleeve. So don't do too many, and kind of try to even them out, and then usually I work my way from the other side as well and kind of meet in the middle. I feel like I'm covering up what I'm doing. There we go. And as I do it, I want to kind of keep track of how close I am to getting this to fit in here. So if my end, can you see that, is lined up, and this, I think I'm about good actually. I don't know, we'll see. We can always, adjust it in a moment. Flipping it over, right sides together. And just like as you gather it, just leave it. Don't even, you don't have to worry about tying a knot. Just let it stay for a second. And put right sides together. And I'll pin this side first. Maybe I'll pin one more. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. It's feeling like maybe it's a little short. We'll see. But that's why I always pin the ends, and then I can adjust the middle to spread out my gathers if I have to. Okay. Yeah, I was overzealous in my gathering. That's looking better. So your raw edges need to be pinned together. Let's see, I'll get my pin cushion down here. And pin. Every couple inches, inch and a half, inch, depending on what you're comfortable with. And then I'll do like a couple from this edge. See how much. It's looking pretty good. Stick that pin so the seam allowance stays down. And, you know, we're not finishing any of our seam allowances in here. This is just really, really beginner, quick sewing. If you are at home and you're doing this along with me, you can always, you know, trim these seam allowances, finish them off with a serger if you have one, or just finish them off with a zigzag. It's all up to you. I'm not doing that for these live streams because they're just kind of quick lessons and I want to get to the meat of it. Okay, so I'm all pinned along that shoulder seam. Go back to the sewing machine. The biggest thing to remember at this point is take it off of basting. Don't keep it on basting, okay? So we want to put it back to a normal stitch length. Have it about 3 on mine. And I'm going to set it up so that I like to do it so that my gathered stitches are on top because I feel like I have more control over what they end up looking like if I can see them as I sew this seam. And again, I want to go back to a slight zigzag because mine is stretchy. You don't need to do that if you don't have stretchy fabric. Okay. And we are off. Okay. So just go slow. This first part doesn't have any gathers. I'm keeping the edge of the presser foot at the edge of the fabric like normal, giving us about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm getting into where my gathers are now, so you just want to like make sure that their gathers are looking even as you sew over the top of them. You don't have to sew to the left of them. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. You can kind of sew right down the middle of where your gathers are. It doesn't matter because if any of them are showing, if any of that stitching is showing, you can take it out later. And I'm kind of using my fingers. It's hard to see. Tip that a little bit. I'm using my fingers to kind of flatten out and evenly distribute my gathers. I feel like I have a bump here. There we go. Again, I'm keeping my eye on the edge of the foot, not so, well, you do have to keep an eye on what you're sewing because you're making sure that your gathers are sewing, you know, fairly evenly, but also for the seam allowance, you want to keep your eye on the edge of the presser foot. Make sure you backstitch, pull it off, And this is always my favorite part because you get to look at the gathers. So here, let's look at it on this table. So here is the right side. You can see how nicely it gathered on that sleeve. So that you have this. This is the back, but you get the idea. You have this cute capped sleeve like that. That's just going to be hemmed here, and you're going to sew the side seams. But the reason I haven't sewed the side seams yet is because I want to sew the zipper in first. So I've got all kinds of crazy order of operations here, but I promise you it's going to make all the difference. It's after 3 o'clock, so I'm going to end there. I'm going to fix my box pleat that I messed up, and next week we're going to put a zipper in, we're going to sew the side seams, and we're going to hem the neck, hem the sleeves, hem the bottom, and I think we're actually going to have kind of a cute little tunic-y dress thing that has a zipper in it. I am skipping the pockets. I said at the beginning I was going to add some pockets, or maybe I said it in my I think in an Instagram story this morning that I was going to add pockets. I'm not adding pockets on this, just because I want to keep it simple. But we're going to do all that next week, and I really am happy that you stayed with me. Or if you're watching it in the recording, hopefully you are sewing along, making a cute little dress. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email or put it in the comments of this YouTube video. Bye.